From the Nick and Izzy Network Studios in New York, this is The Hirsh Show. Tonight's guest from the Ramones, punk rock legend CJ Ramone. And now, here's your host, Kyle Hirshon.
Happy Super Bowl Sunday, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of The Hirsh Show. Thank you so much for tuning in last week with the chat with my producer, Nick. And this week, we got a very special treat for you today. I'm speaking with CJ Ramone from the famous Ramones. CJ, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, good to be here.
So, you know, I gotta tell you, I loved listening to the Ramones growing up. My dad got me introduced to this. Obviously, you know, I'm a bit younger than the typical Ramones fan at this point. You know, I was born after you guys did your last show in Los Angeles. But, you know, this was something that I enjoyed. I love listening to you guys on the radio. And, you know, every now or so, you know, I get a chance to see some good shows out on the scene. But of course, obviously with COVID, you know, you can't do anything. So first of all, how are you doing with the whole COVID situation?
Well, you know, funny, I really, in 2019, I announced that it was going to be my last shows going out on the road.
Oh, really?
You know, doing my solo stuff and doing the Ramone stuff. You know, I've got 30 plus years in. I've missed plenty of birthdays and holidays and everything else. And I actually had a bunch of health issues that were making touring tough. So I was planning on having the 2020 off. So I couldn't have timed it better, but I've actually used the whole lockdown and everything else to my benefit. I lost a bunch of weight. I got off all my meds. I'm healthier than I've been in years. You know, touring, being on the road. There's no rules. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
I beat myself up pretty good over the course of the years, but yeah, I really have tried to use it use this time in a good way. At this point, of course, it's kind of, it's really kind of tough on everybody, you know, being locked up at home and everything else. But, you know, I've spent more time with my kids probably than I ever have before. My wife and my dad, who lives with me too. So we've really been able to like really regroup and you know, it's pretty unique situation to be able to spend this much time with your family at least. But yeah, I mean, at this point, there's people losing their jobs. You know, the music industry in general came to a screeching halt, you know, in March. So it's really been you know, it's really taken its toll at this point. You know, every day I hear about another famous club that I played in for years is shutting down. But it's just a tough situation all around.
Yeah.
Plus my Bills lost.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. The only good team in New York.
Yeah. I mean, I've been a Bills fan since the Jets left New York. I was a Jets fan. When I was a kid, I was lucky enough my dad used to hang out at a bar right across the street from Hofstra University called Bill's Meadowbrook.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. So I used to go across the street to Hofstra and go stand and watch the Jets practice.
Wow.
You know, it was pretty cool. But when the Jets left New York, I went right over to the Bills.
I think that's really cool. I mean, they had a terrific run this year, despite you know it's the Jets. The Jets are absolutely garbage. And as a Jet fan, what's winning? I've never heard of this foreign concept called winning.
Yeah. You know, I was always of the opinion that the Jets, you know, New Jersey Jets sounds good.
Yeah.
Cool, New Jersey Jets, you know, New Jersey Giants. But that's a whole different argument. But I really enjoyed watching the Bills this season. I mean, it broke tons of club records. They broke
Absolutely.
a whole club records as well as league records. But it's we got a young team. We're pretty much a young team. We hadn't, Allen hadn't been to the that deep yet in the playoffs. And I think another 2 or 3 years, we got to fill a couple holes in the defense. But I think in another 2 or 3 years, we'll probably be in there winning it.
I think so. I think the Bills have a very good chance in the next couple of years to really make a really fantastic run.
If we can hold on to the guys that we have right now.
Exactly.
Give it 2 years to kind of gel and if Diggs will stick around and the rest of these guys can stay with it and the Bills willing to pay their salaries. That's always the issue. I really think we'll have a super killer team in another 2 years.
I think so. So this is Super Bowl Sunday. Obviously, this is going to be right before the Super Bowl. Who's your pick? Who's your pick?
I think it's Kansas City. It's terrible to say, but I am a Brady fan. I really like Brady. I mean, undeniably, he's one of the greatest of all time.
Absolutely.
I really would like to see him win another bowl outside of the Patriots. I'm for football in general. I think that would be a good thing. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
He kind of lived under the shadow of the coach there for a lot of years, but he's but I just don't think the Bucs they just don't have the offense that they'd be at. He's unbelievable. You know what I mean? But Brady,
yes.
Without a doubt is unbelievable, but I don't think they got the offense to get by Kansas City.
Yeah, you've got Kelsey, you've got Mahomes. Mahomes is one hell of a quarterback.
Yeah.
You can't really beat someone like him. I'd like to see Mahomes take a second, back-to-back trophy. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. He's hopefully he's 100%. I think this extra week off, he'll be 100%. He had the problem with the foot and
the concussion. Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully, he's running on all cylinders for that game, because I'll tell you, that's one thing you can't do with Brady. You can't give him any breathing room. The second you do, that's how the old timers are. What they lose in speed and their arm over the years, they learn to make up for in other ways. You know what I mean? It's just like an old fighter. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You may put 100 more hits on them, but they're going to get the one that counts. You know what I mean? Or they're going to at least make you pay for everything you lay on them. So, but Brady he's definitely absolutely a threat. But Kansas City, they just don't have any faults right now. I mean, they don't have offense or defense. They really are a solid, well put together team, and they've been to the big games. So.
Yeah, I think at this point we should be on my friend's podcast, Empty the Bench, a big sports podcast. I think we'd be great analysis. This is awesome. I'm talking football with a Ramone. So let's get back to the Ramones. Well, actually, not just the Ramones. I'll talk about your latest solo record, The Holy Spell. I listened to it earlier this morning, and definitely I think it's got more of that modern punk sound with a hint of Ramones. So what was the general reception like?
It's probably my most well received record. It's my third or fourth record, something like that. But I really didn't do all that much songwriting while I was in the Ramones. I really I really didn't do that much. I wrote a couple of tunes, but it was fairly intimidating to be in a band, with, legends and guys who had been at it for years and years. Plus Dee Dee was still writing songs. It was hard for me to ever, to submit a song and be like, here, put this on a record next to Joey's song or Dee Dee's song.
Sure. Yeah.
Kind of tough. So I got a couple of songs in on the last record, but, songwriting is one of those things, the more you do it, the better you get. So, post Ramones, I did the Bad Chopper record. Well, I had a band called Los Gusanos, but it was a much more kind of heavy metal, rock and roll influenced record. I did one record as with my guys from Los Gusanos, and then I moved on and did a record with a band titled Bad Chopper. But really, as far as stylistically, those records were really far apart. My first record as CJ Ramone, post Ramones, was Reconquista.
Okay.
And I love that record. But those songs, I wrote those songs over the period of probably 7 or 8 years. I had left music for a while to raise my kids. And when I came back to it, I had all these songs. I never really put music totally away. I always keep my acoustic guitar next to me. I'm always messing around. Yeah, mm-hmm. I see on your wall.
Yeah.
So Reconquista, I had written a bunch of songs over the course of, maybe 5 or 6 years, I should say.
Okay.
The follow-up to it, Last Chance to Dance, was songs I wrote while I was on the road. But, the more I played out with my band and got, I was doing Ramone stuff in the set again and everything else. And my writing kind of got more refined as I went along, So when I put out, by the time I put out American Beauty, I had really found my own, and my style was solidly nailed down. So that the Holy Spell, to me, it kind of contains the best of all the little things about the other records all put onto one record. The melody lines are real nice, and lyrics, I have to say, I've never been shy about expressing stuff. So I don't struggle lyrically. Lyrics come to me really easy, and I like my lyrics. Unlike my voice, I don't like my voice at all. But a lot of singers say that. But lyrically, my stuff has always been pretty good. Pretty solid. And then, the Holy Spell, what made it different was that my longtime companion in the band and the guy who really got me back on track musically, Steve Soto, who, he played with the Adolescents for years. Steve's just a great guy. He was a solid dude. He died before we got into the studio to make that record. Mm. So that was the first time I was kind of in the studio pretty much on my own. Steve was my guy, we worked on a lot of that stuff together. But yeah, so Holy Spell was a special record for a lot of reasons. But, first and foremost, I think, if that turns out to be my final record, my last record that I put out as CJ Ramone, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I was listening. One of my favorites was Stand Up. One of my favorites. Oh, yeah. I always thought that was a nice little anthem to get you pumped. Something to do while you're running on the treadmill or whatever. I thought that was something really cool.
I got it. What I want to do is I want to write a good rally song for the Bills.
Yeah. Stand up, go Bills.
Yep.
So you mentioned in previous interviews before that prior to your inception into the band, you were a fan of the Ramones. What was like the music scene on? Obviously, I'm an Islander, so what the scene on the island was like. But what was it like in the punk scene?
Well, to tell you the truth, before I was in the Ramones, I never really played in a punk band.
Really?
The Ramones it's funny. The Ramones are considered punk because they themselves were punks, like street punks,
right?
Know what I mean? But they weren't necessarily punk rock, like like the English stuff or the California stuff that was more political and all that.
Right.
The Ramones to me were a rock and roll band. But when I was younger and I played in clubs, I came up in the club scene on Long Island. I played heavy metal.
Okay.
I was playing in the clubs in the early 80s, early 80s to the late 80s. And I was lucky enough that I got into a band that became pretty popular on Long Island. We used to do pretty good crowds. The name of the band was Guitar Pete's Axe Attack. So
Okay.
Guitar Pete was like a Long Island, he was like a Long Island hero. The guy's an incredible guitar player. But in that band, under Pete's tutelage, I really learned how to handle myself on stage and just kind of get used to playing in front of bigger crowds and stuff like that. And back then, we were a mostly original band. We played mostly originals, and we could put 400 or 500 people in a club in a night. Like that was really the heyday of the music scene on Long Island. Like that 80s time frame was just incredible. I mean, every night there were bands to go see. The only bad nights, of course, were Monday and Tuesday. Wednesdays were always shaky, but I mean, there were so many clubs to play, so many good bands to see, and so many people coming out to see it.
Absolutely. I mean, I was watching a documentary on Twisted Sister. Yeah. Seeing them, the early days in New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, obviously, they're a Nassau County band. So, my dad went to high school with Dee Snider, and it was a very different time back then. And obviously now, I mean, there's still a vibrant music scene, obviously more eastern of the island, really, like Patchogue or stuff like that. But stuff of the matter, it's still hopping. We just need to get rid of this virus before we can do anything.
Yeah.
So you served in the Marine Corps. My dad served in the Navy just after Vietnam, and I understand that when you had the opportunity to join the Ramones, they threw you in the brig. What?
Well, that's because I was auditioning for the Ramones instead of being back at Camp Pendleton where I was supposed to be. So I had a little bit of trouble there, but wasn't too bad.
Yeah. Did they give you like the bread and water diet?
No, nothing that bad. We actually got to stay in the it was kind of the brig because we were under guard, but we were staying in barracks that whoever was in those barracks before us had deployed. So they were empty. So they just put us in these barracks and, went out on work details and all that fun stuff. But nothing too serious.
And as soon as you got out, you said, screw you, I'm joining the Ramones.
Well, I found out that I got the gig while I was in the brig. Johnny actually called me while I was in, and I thought it was going to be my mother. I was like, oh, my mother, she's going to be crying.
Yeah.
And it was actually Johnny, and he called me up and he's like, what's going on? I was like, Johnny, sorry, I should have told you, I was in the Marines. And he's like, well, what's happened? And I said, I'm going to be here for a little while, and then they're just going to discharge me. And he said, all right, well, do your time. Don't get in trouble. And when you get out, you got a job.
There you go. I think that's probably the best case scenario you could get.
Yeah, well, I went from the lowest point in my life to the highest point in my life in a couple of seconds,
Exactly. And then you made your debut. I think, oh man, I forget. It was a telethon. I don't remember the name of the telethon.
Jerry Lewis telethon.
It was the Jerry Lewis telethon. Okay, yes.
1, 2, 3, 4. Go, I wanna be succeeded. I'm nothing to do, know where to go. I wanna be succeeded. Just give me to the airport and put me on the plane. Hurry before I go and sing. I take it from my fingers, I take it from my brow. No, yeah.
I remember this was on Channel 9, 1989. You made your official debut. You get on stage. Let's talk about your first gigging show, not like a television gig, whatever. Right. What was that like when Joey said, "Take it, CJ," for the first time?
Yeah, that's very bizarre. Very bizarre.
Yeah, because you heard "Take It, Dee Dee" for many years, but now he's saying your name. I'm like, this is a dream.
Yeah, I never really relaxed into that either. It was always all the way up until the end. You know, I just playing and looking over and seeing Joey on my right and Johnny just behind him. It was very bizarre. It was real. It was so strange because I was such a big fan. But in fact, when I was riding around with a buddy of mine, and it came over the radio that Dee Ramone announced today that he left the Ramones because he wanted to get sober, and I turned to my buddy and said, "I'll never go to another Ramones show.
Wow.
It ain't the Ramones without Dee."
And then sure enough,
Never to say never, because I ended up at every single Ramones show they ever did after that. But yeah, it was a great feeling, you know, to look over and see those guys, you know, just the realization I was up on stage with them. But the way I always explain it to everybody is, imagine, everyone's like, well, how'd it feel? How'd it feel? I'm like, imagine if you got to play with your favorite band. Just imagine what that would be like. And that's kind of how I felt. And, you know, that's why while I was in the band, I used to, you know, invite crowds of fans to come back to my room and party all night. And I was always hanging out with the crew and the fans because I felt more like one of them than I did like, you know,
exactly.
You know, to me, the Ramones were, you know, legends. And I could never imagine in my head what they did when they were off stage. You know what I mean? Like the way these guys look, what else could they possibly do? You know?
Exactly.
It was a good time. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Now I want to get more into the touring sort of life. I was actually checking an interview with Marky, and something about assigned seats in a van. Like, is this a school bus? I'm like,
it's really just where everybody felt most comfortable, right?
Okay, yeah.
You had Monty Melnick, the Ramones tour manager from Jump, driving. Johnny would always ride shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
Mark was in the first row, right behind the two front seats. Joey was in the row behind him. And then I would leave a row empty, and I would sit in the last row in the van because it was the longest seat. And I could stretch out and sleep because, you know, I was so amped up all the time. I never slept, you know what I mean? I would sleep in the van on the drives. But yeah, but not only that, I've always been a pretty avid book reader. I read a lot of books. And I love listening to music constantly. So I used to get in the back and put my Walkman on and listen to, you know, whatever I felt like listening to. Or I would sit back there and I would read. And it really helped to kind of make me feel like I wasn't wasting the hours in the van. Because when I listen to music, I don't just listen to music to listen to it. I'm always like picking off little things I never heard before, or paying attention, you know, focusing in on one thing. It's almost like I'm constantly studying.
Yeah.
I'm a music fan, like beyond the beyond music fan.
Exactly.
But and reading is another thing I've always been interested in. I have a pretty large library of books, and it just really helped me feel like I wasn't just sitting there, you know, losing my mind.
Right. You ever thought about writing a memoir?
Yeah, you know, I started one years back before my daughter was born, and I wrote a good amount of it, and I get on it and I get off it, and I get on it and I get off it. But you know, now with Instagram and Facebook, I put up memories from my time with the Ramones and before pretty frequently. So I'm putting out all the information, but kind of in a different way, you know what I mean? Rather than writing a book. I've just been leaking it out a little bit at a time, and I always get comments back. CJ, we love these memories, you know, keep putting them up, and, you know, put up a photograph, tell a story behind it. Writing a book is, I mean, it takes real serious discipline if you do it on your own. I tried writing it with somebody else, and it just didn't work out. You know, I was like, it doesn't sound like me writing it. It just sounds like me reporting it, you know?
Right.
And that's why I decided to take it on myself. And then I wrote, I mean, I had a really good kind of little ritual down every night. When my two oldest would go to bed and my wife would go to bed, I would sit downstairs and make a pot of coffee and, you know, coffee and Jack Daniels. And I would sit there and I would just write. I would just write. And it didn't take me all that long to do, like 300 pages probably.
Wow.
And then I just, you know, my baby girl was born, and that was, you know, which kind of took over my life there for a good long time. And then I just never felt motivated to get back to it. And people keep asking me, when's that book coming out? And I'm like, yeah, I'm working on it. I might get to it at some point, but that's not as motivated as I was.
Yeah. So I got a couple more questions and then we're going to end it. So I want to get to this part of the show where I found out that this is the first time I'm actually speaking to someone who is a cameo on The Simpsons.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I love The Simpsons, and I didn't, you know, obviously I was young. I didn't know who any of the band members were. You know, I never really like looked into it. And then, you know, I looked at it yesterday because it was my friend's birthday and we were teasing this episode. And then, you know, I just hear you go to hell, you old bastard. I'm sure, you know, what, you know, you got to be on The Simpsons with, you know, these guys and, you know, that have been these characters for decades. I mean, what was that like?
That's, I was a huge Simpsons fan. I've always said that's one of the highlights of my career. I got to curse on primetime TV. You know, the 10-year-old Chris Ward was like, yeah, I cursed on TV. But yeah, that was just incredible, unreal. So,
yeah,
you know, there's a couple of things from my career that are just kind of, you know, real high points, and that I've always considered one of them. That I always thought that's like unbelievably cool. That, and then we got to we did a cover of the song Spider-Man.
Yes.
And there's a great video for that with some animation in it. That's really cool. I really, really enjoy that. Because Spider-Man, when we got asked to do that project, it was called Saturday Morning Cartoons, and it was all different bands doing covers of Saturday Morning Cartoons.
Oh, wow.
And Johnny said to me, well, I said to Johnny, I go, John, we got to do Spider-Man. And he was like, all right, you sit down and figure it out, and then we'll see how it goes. You know, I just did it Ramone style, but I added in that really fast bass line, you know, and I just love that. That's like that's another one of my favorite things. And then of course is playing on stage with Lemmy from Motorhead.
Oh my God.
Robbie Krieger from The Doors. I mean, you know, there's some real highlights in there, you know. I mean, being in the Ramones itself is just, you know, it's just a once in a lifetime thing, but all the other little things that happened during it really just made it that much sweeter.
Yeah. I'll always be happy. You know, so you mentioned Motorhead. I mean, Lemmy and I, God bless you, Lemmy, we shared the same birthday. So, so lastly, if Johnny and Joey were still around today, and would there ever be a point in like, we got to get back out there. We got to get back out there as the Ramones.
Yeah, there was already talk about a reunion tour. We had a standing offer for $1 million to go play 2 shows in Argentina.
Wow.
And we were going to split it evenly 4 ways. But Joey died.
Yeah.
Once Joey was gone, I mean, for all the stuff that you hear about Joey and Johnny not getting along, when Joey died, Johnny said to me, well, there can never be a Ramones reunion now. Like Johnny understood that without Joey, there was no Ramones.
Exactly. Joey was the voice. No one could ever really replicate him.
He was the front man, without a doubt. Joey was a really, really good front man. He really was.
Yeah, I think I know. He was still pretty sick during the final year as well. I know he had like some sort of cancer or something.
Diagnosed in '94.
Yeah, so yeah, he was sick at the last show, and you know, I hate to say it, but you know, you could kind of tell on the final show after looking at the video and listening to it. You know, you kind of hear a difference in his voice. You know, but you know, towards the very end, he kept going
through those last couple of years, and we were really hitting it hard too. We were out on the road constantly, but the band knew it was coming to an end, and they wanted to, pack in as much playing time as they possibly could, you know, and make the money.
Yeah.
And Joey, you know, he hung in there all the way up to the end.
Yeah. You know, and then of course, you know, with Johnny passing away a few years later, I mean, you know, you lost two of the core members of the band, but you know, the fact that we still have people like you, Marky, even Elvis and Richie, you know, still playing Ramones stuff, you know, I still think the legacy will live on long after everybody is gone.
Yeah, without a doubt. The Ramones are one of those typical situations where you're worth more dead than you are alive. It's nice that they got inducted into the Hall of Fame after Joey was gone. But I think if the band had had a shot at a reunion, you know, I really think it would have catapulted them into, you know, that iconic status before they were dead.
Yeah.
But, you know, realistically, the Ramones are at, you know, have achieved a level now where the Ramones logo is as recognizable as Elvis, you know, the famous pictures of Elvis or Marilyn Monroe or James Dean. You know, they've achieved that status that very few artists or people ever achieve. And it's, you know, it's really a kind of testament to the years of hard work that they put in, you know, largely ignored by the mainstream. And they just kept hammering at it until the you know, their underground legend just blew up, and everybody kind of got on board to the point where, you know, you go into a high-end clothing store and you know, there's a Ramones shirt for $80 or $120.
Exactly. You know,
but that's the iconic status that they grew to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, now the modern day bands, you know, like Green Day is a prime example.
Yeah.
You know,
Rancid.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
you know,
these are bands, you know, that made punk rock what it should have been when the Clash and the Sex Pistols and the Damned and the Ramones and Susie and the Banshees and, you know, all these great punk rock bands, goth bands, you know, those should have been the bands to achieve the commercial success. But thank God, on the underground, the kids knew how great all that music was, and they kept it alive. And that's a beautiful legacy of all those bands. But it's also a statement on how music that is born out of teenage frustration and anger and everything else, you know, anything that gives kids a voice lives on, you know.
Absolutely.
Teen angst. You know what I mean? It's a part of our evolutionary process.
Exactly. Got to get rid of that hormonal energy somehow.
Yeah.
And I think music's probably one of the best ways to do it.
Absolutely.
And I think at that point, you know, at this point, I think we're going to end it here because I think we got a big game going on in a little bit.
All right.
But, you know, CJ Ramone, I got to tell you, you had such an amazing story. And, you know, congratulations. Now, would you want to consider this a retirement from music?
I'm definitely stepping back, way back. I'm not going to go out on the road and hammer it like I used to. You know, I might still jump out and do some shows here and there, but
Yeah.
I am not going to get back out on the road and hammer away like I was. You know, it's.
And I think you've definitely earned that time off per se. You've had a great career, and you know, just keep being you. You know, everybody loves the Ramones, and just keep that legacy going.
All right.
All right. This is the Hirsh Show. Tune in next week. We'll see. Actually, no, we're going to take a week off next week, but join us. I believe, let's see. I can't remember dates well. It's February 21st. We'll see you then. For now, this is Kyle Hirshon saying good night.